Have you ever wondered about your family's roots? Where do we come from? Where did our parents come from, our grandparents, our great great grandparents, and so on? How many generations can we go back in our family tree? And when I'm talking about our family tree, we're primarily talking about the Ishee family of Mississippi, Ishee. There's a lot of us in the United States, but a lot of us don't exactly know where we came from. I hope you'll join me as we explore our family tree. The first thing I'd like to do in this presentation, that's a little bit fancy, isn't it? Presentation, this slideshow talking about the Ishee family tree. I want everybody to know that I am not a professional genealogist. Anyone who has ever researched their family history, you know that there are certain assumptions you have to make, and you get really lucky and you find a true fact that is documented by hard documents that you can see. But I'm not a professional genealogist. The information provided here is believed by me to be true, but I'm not certifying it as true. We don't know the facts unless we were actually there. The one thing I want to stress before we even get started with the Ishee family is the importance of understanding our family tree and multiple generations. For instance, if you look at my family tree here, there's 4 generations listed. I've got over 2,800 people in my real family tree on Ancestry.com, but we're certainly not going to cover that. But the first thing I want to emphasize is that I'm just as much a Parker as I am an Ishee. I'm just as much a Gray as I am an Ishee. I'm just as much a McCord or a Webb or a Hitt. You understand, when we talk about DNA, looking at this family tree, myself at the lower bottom center, you have 2 parents, then you have 4 grandparents, and then you have 8 grandparents. If we were to go back another generation, that would be 16 great-grandparents. And genetically, I'm just as much a McCord as I am an Ishee. I'm just as much a Parker as I am an Ishee. In other words, we tend to look at our family tree on the paternal side. That's because of our last name being Ishee traces the paternal roots, but I'm just as much a Thomaston as I am an Ishee. So this is a glimpse at my own family tree. Most people, including myself, we want to know, where did we come from? Where did my people come from? Well, technically, your people come from all over, but if you trace one branch at a time, then you get answers. My paternal branch, the Ishee line, comes from Switzerland, or what we now know as Switzerland. How do we know that? Well, the family legend that I grew up with was that there were 3 brothers who immigrated to America from Germany. That is what I was taught, probably what all of my cousins were taught. The 3 brothers that came to America from Germany were named John, Jacob, and Fred, and that is what we were taught as part of our family legend. And the first thing I want to talk about here on this slide is about using this document as a basis for our family history, a basis for determining where our family really comes from. But first, let me explain how a census was taken back in the 1800s. Back in the 1800s, a person would come to your home, a census taker, and they would sit down with the elder people in the home, and they would take prior to 1850, they would just take a list of the number of people in that home, and then whoever was head of the household. And then starting around 1850, they actually started taking the names of each person and their ages and other data as part of the census. And here we have John Ishee. This is in the 1850 census for Mississippi. John Ishee, and then he is 65 years old. He is male. He is a farmer. And then it asks for the place of your birth. And John Ishee tells the census taker his place of birth was Switzerland. Now, that one document proves to me a lot. You know, we think we came from Germany, but this area of Switzerland was actually only about 20 miles from Germany, or what we now know as Germany, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But this census tells us so much. His wife was 42 years old, Lumi, and some people in Ancestry and our family trees see that as Lenny. If you look at the handwriting, it could be Linney, or it could be Lumey. I tend to believe it's Lumi because that matches so many other records. And then you have three of their kids who, Zachariah, 15, male, he was born in Mississippi. And then Amandaville, or Amanda, was 12, a female, same place. And then William, he was age 3 at this time. He was male, born also in Mississippi. So we know that this is our John because his age is correct for this census. His wife's name fits, and the names of all of their children match what we know. So this is a very important document for our family history. It proves, at least to me, that our origins are in Switzerland. So where in Switzerland did the family come from? Well, this is a map of Western Europe and showing France, Switzerland, Belgium, Germany, Austria, and northern Italy. But our family comes from this area that is just above the word Switzerland, right where the red dot is on the map, just west of Zurich. Now, it's very important to notice that Western Europe at this time was in a period of conflict, huge conflict. The Napoleonic Wars had broken out. There was a lot going on in the late 1700s, the early 1800s in this area that we now know as Switzerland. The family legend, of course, says that our people came from Germany, but technically Germany was not even a country yet, but it was described in most documents of the time as a concept, really, of Germanic peoples. And technically it was known as the Holy Roman Empire. Now, as we said, this is a period of extreme conflict in this part of Europe. Everybody was trying to get their hands on what we now know as Switzerland. France was trying to take control of this region, as well as Austria and Russia. And France invaded this area of Switzerland in 1798, and it temporarily became the Helvetic Republic, and it remained the Helvetic Republic until the year 1803. Bottom line, there was an awful lot of conflict at this time, and word had it that a good life could be had in the New World of America. So now let's learn more about the village of our ancestors. It is called Oberpip. Oberpip is about 20 miles south of the Rhine River, and it is located in Canton Bern, Switzerland. Some family ancestry records indicate that our family originates in a village called Rumisburg, which is less than 5 miles away. You can actually see it here. Rumisburg is right up in this area. You can see just the edge of the village there. But in 1800, the population of Oberpip is estimated at about 600 people, mostly farm families, or what we would now call serfs, S-E-R-F-S. They were peasants. Modern day population of Oberpip is around 1,700 people. And by the way, to this day, 92% of the population speaks German. And agriculture, as you can see by the fields surrounding the village here, agriculture is prevalent in this area. So this is where the records point to the origins of the Ishee family that eventually found its way to Mississippi. This is a little bit better, almost 3D image of the village of Oberpip. It's located on the southern slope of what's known as the Jura Mountains, J-U-R-A. Farmers did not own their land at this time in the late 1700s, early 1800s, but they were generally peasants or serfs. In America, however, they had heard that a man could actually own a piece of land and didn't have to work for somebody else. This area of Switzerland was renowned for cheese making and small grain production, including wheat and barley. But a beautiful place, Oberpip, Switzerland. And by the way, if you're curious if we still have relatives there in Rummelsburg and Oberpip, absolutely. I want you to meet Paul Ishee. He spells it the old country way, I-S-C-H-I. He is the current mayor of Rummelsburg, Switzerland, which is just adjacent to Oberpip, Switzerland. So hello, Paul, a distant cousin of ours. Now, this is an old image of Oberpip from the early 1800s. It shows a very pastoral village with livestock roaming the streets, just a place that seems just a lovely place. And geographically, it was a lovely place, but politically, it was in turmoil. You did not know who your king was. You did not know who your queen was. You didn't know who owned the land from one year to the next. It was just a tumultuous time in this part of Europe. And at some point, the Ishee family said, enough is enough. And they packed their bags for the New World. Now, they would have had to have arranged passage on a ship in Amsterdam, which is probably the nearest port. It's about 490 miles away from the village of Oberpip. And I presume that they walked part of the way and got passage on small boats for the rest of the way. This is the boats would have been going along the Rhine River, but this would be typical in the early 1800s of a peasant family striking out for a passenger ship to the New World. And the blue line here is the Rhine River, roughly drawn here, and our family is, let's see, about 20 miles south of Basel. You see Basel here at the bottom of the map right here. And our family was from right in this region here in Oberpip, just above the label for Switzerland, right there at the bottom of the map. This is the journey that they would have had to make to get to Amsterdam, and most likely they traveled by foot to Basel and then by boat to Amsterdam. That, however, is just my assumption. I've got absolutely no facts to back that up, but it is the most likely scenario where they walked the 20 or 30 miles to the Rhine River, and there were small craft boats on the Rhine River that would have carried them north all the way to Amsterdam, which was their point of departure. Now, this document, I want you to pay close attention to this document because it is probably the most important document in our family's history. This is the original passenger list from the ship Commerce, which brought 235 Germanic immigrants to America. Our family is on this list, including, you know, the family legend, John, Jacob, and Fred. They're here. And, you know, John, Jacob, and Fred Ishee, this has got to be our family. We certainly have to assume that, and all indicators are that this is our family. There were 9 members of the family aboard the ship, and the ship was named the Commerce. It was a brig, and the captain was Nathaniel Ray. And let's now go in order here of the 9 members of the family. Passenger number 81 right here was Ulrich Ishee, and then his wife Barbara, and then their 5 children. They had Johann, or John, Hans Jacob, or Jacob, and then they had Maria, Frederick, and Barbara. And then the grandparents in the group, they were the parents of Ulrich Ishee. There was Hans Ulrich and Elizabeth, his wife. So if you count them, there are 9 members of the family. The grandparents would have been in their 60s. The parents, Ulrich and Barbara, were in their 40s, and the children ranged anywhere from age 3 to age 19. John was the oldest child at 19, and Barbara was the youngest child at age 3. And their baggage, I want you to pay close attention to this right here. The quantity of baggage for the entire Ishee clan was 2 sacks. Now, this is the thought that has kept me awake for many a night. What in the world would you pack for 9 people in 2 bags? A family Bible? Maybe 1 change of clothes for each person, maybe extra shoes, maybe small hand tools. Think about that for a minute. 2 sacks for 9 people. And that's exactly where we're going to leave this episode, part 1 of, I'm not sure how many episodes we're going to end up with, but I want you to sleep on this tonight. 2 sacks for 9 people. That is a vivid image in my mind. And I hope that you've learned something about the roots of the Ishee family and where we come from. In the next couple of episodes, we're going to explore the voyage across the Atlantic Ocean. And yes, we know the exact ship. We know quite a few things. The captain of the ship, the conditions on board. We have the contracts that the Ishee family would have signed with Captain Nathaniel Ray for their passage across the Atlantic, and we know the exact date that they landed in America. And then in a future episode, we're going to explore how they went from standing on a dock in Philadelphia to a plot of farmland in the Mississippi Territory. It was quite a journey they undertook, and there's 15 years where we have no record of the Ishee family. And, how in the world did they get from Philadelphia to Mississippi? And then all of a sudden, bam, there they are in 1820, one of the earliest census documents of Mississippi. Make no mistake about it, friends and family, our ancestors were determined to make a new life in a new world.